Surprise, surprise. It is Melbourne. It is raining. It is cold. Something about me is that my mood is very much based upon the weather. So I don't know why I live in Melbourne apart from the art, the culture, everything good about Melbourne. The weather really gets me down. But the one thing about weather like this is that it is the perfect time to sit down, have a yap. Have a good yap, have a chat, have a debrief, have a little discussion. So that's what we're going to do today. It's you and me, and I have a lot to talk about. Not only is it raining, cold, wet, miserable in Melbourne, it is spring. So we kind of expect it, I feel like, but also the hope is there that the weather could be nicer. And I feel like when we come off the back of a few days where it's actually like blue skies, sunny, like I literally went to the beach and swam the other day. And I was like, yes, finally, everything's picking up. My life doesn't seem so bad. But then we get smacked over the face with a little day like today. And what makes it even harder is when you have come back from a trip. Could be a holiday, could be a work trip, but just anywhere with nicer weather, I feel like the holiday blues just set in a little bit harder. And I have been overseas for the past sort of 5-6 weeks. I was in the US, I went to Mexico for my birthday. I'm sure you saw it. And so coming back to this can make it even more difficult. Like the holiday blues were already there and now it's just sunk in even deeper. But this does give a good day, a good amount of time to do a bit of reflection. Because over in America, it was a bit of a fact-finding mission. Okay, so I was there talking to as many people as possible, networking with as many people as possible, sort of asking questions, sussing a few things out. And the way that I do that is via street interviews. I do that in Melbourne. I've done it in Sydney. I have done it internationally before. And now we have done it in the US of A. I did it in a couple of different states, in a couple of different areas. I went to different networking events. So I feel like my sample size was very diverse. And so we can definitely trust my facts of my thoughts, of my truths. Okay, but I've spoken to I'm just going to put like a rough number on it, 300, 400 women. That's a big difference. Anyway, 300, 400 women about what they do for work, what it actually means, and what makes them feel confident. I have done that in formal settings. I've done that in casual settings. I've done that of my own will on the street, talking to people. And today we're going to break it down. Australia v USA Corporate Career Women Edition. Let's go through my findings. Get ready.
Oh my God, it's so good to see you.
I'm so ready for this chat.
All right, are we ready?
Go, okay.
I'm cordially invited.
You're cordially invited.
Well, you're cordially invited.
So good.
Everything.
I got to exactly.
You're cordially invited.
Cordially invited. You are cordially invited.
I live here now.
I'm Ashley Paholic, and this is Cordially Invited. Okay, I have got my tea, I have got my notes, and I am ready to have a good yap session. We are talking about my trip to America, and I think that the food, the culture, the way of life was not the culture shock for me. It was the women. I tried to put myself into as many positions as possible to talk candidly about life, work, like career, ambitions, those types of things, supporting each other, community, that type of thing. I tried to talk to as many different people as possible, and I have the findings right here. So I want to talk through them today because I found them very, very interesting. The first one that I found the biggest shock for me, and that probably is going to change my mindset and already has changed my mindset a little bit around literally how I interact in the world, is tall poppy syndrome. I did not realize how big of a deal it was in Australia until I went to America. In America, people are just doing what they want when they want because they feel like it. If there is someone walking down the street filming, no one really bats an eyelid. If someone is over there dressed in a certain way that isn't like the fashionable norm, no one really bats an eyelid. If you're on the train and someone has a snake wrapped around their neck and they are patting it and they've got big shiny gold pointy toe shoes on, no one bats an eyelid. Maybe with the snake, like you'd look and be a little bit scared, but no one really cares. Whereas here in Australia, I feel like if you do not conform, if you are not in the narrow path of the median, the middle, if you sit outside of that, you are ostracized, you are looked upon, you are laughed at. People want to tear you down either through gossiping, through snide comments, through side looks, through just a little bit of judgment. And I actually felt like this the other day because I went to a fashion show and I was at Melbourne Fashion Week. I love fashion shows. I have been going for the past 15 years in Melbourne. And this year I was lucky enough to be invited. Honestly, goal for me, being invited to a fashion show because I love it so much. Amazing. Was so excited. I got there and the lady was showing us to our seat. Front row. At my favorite fashion show. I was beyond excited. Okay, already I've already taken photos out the front. I've already taken some videos, because I've put in some effort for my outfit. I actually made part of my outfit, so I was really excited. But then as soon as I get to see that I'm front row, I become what I feel like, and the next day I felt like, obnoxious. So I was taking photos of me and my sister sitting front row. I was taking little videos. I was then videoing all of the fashion, all of the models that were walking past, and it was just so much fun. Of course, I'd had a couple of drinks and we were just laughing, enjoying, watching, taking it in. And especially with this type of fashion show, it was very much art, couture, very much like the international kind of runways that you see online, because in Melbourne and in Australia mostly it's quite ready to wear fashion, whereas the international shows are very couture, very avant-garde. You wouldn't see yourself wearing that down the street. And that's what this show is. And that's why I love it so much. So I am taking it in. I'm giving notes. I'm taking videos like this and giving little notes about my thoughts on what's good, what I like, what I don't like, the silhouettes, the fabrics, the draping, how it moves, all of that. But the next day I wake up and I am a big anxiety girl. But this time I was able to actually narrow it down. I wasn't just feeling anxiety, I was feeling low-key embarrassed. And that's where the word obnoxious came from for me, because I felt like maybe I was a little bit obnoxious. But then I started thinking deeper about this because, of course, you're going to do a little spiral. But my spiral was actually helpful because I started thinking about, why did I feel like I was obnoxious? What was it that would have made me annoying, painful, obnoxious to the people around me? And I was thinking, maybe the taking the photos, maybe the sitting in the front row, maybe the videoing. And then I was like, hang on a second. That didn't really impact anyone else around you. You were having fun. You didn't impact anyone. What you were feeling is the fear of judgment. And that fear of judgment comes into not wanting to be seen as anything different or anything other than the same as everyone else. Because if you are different, there is that possibility that people are going to think, oh, who's that? Who does she think she is? Why is she doing that? Those little comments are what I fear. So I realized that my anxiety wasn't real. I was feeling the effects of tall poppy syndrome. And I feel like I have started to broaden my perspective of what tall poppy syndrome is. And I have also realized that I feed into it, picking up on those tiny bits of judgment now and then that just sneak in. And so I realized how ingrained it is in our society, in our thinking, in our culture. It is kind of lame to be seen trying. It is kind of cringy to be seen doing anything outside of the norm. And I think it actually comes down to the fact that the person who is making the judgment is jealous of the fact that you're doing it and they're not. Anyway, in America, I just felt like there was no tall poppy syndrome. And I know that's not correct because I've spoken to other people who say it's definitely there. But I think that because there's so many more people in America, it doesn't feel like you're being as judged by the person that's standing right next to you. And so that has really changed my perspective on things. And it's really also made me think, what am I stopping myself from doing in the fear of someone being like, who's she? What's she doing? Why is she trying? And so that has started making me feel like I need to be doing more. If you have seen my street interviews with women, you know that my last question is always, what makes you feel confident in yourself? Now, I get a range of answers, and I've always got a range of answers, and I like to differentiate them into two sort of categories. So the first one is when they say that they get their confidence from external validation. So that is things like from wearing good clothing, that is from the team saying that they've done a good job, that is from clients singing their praises, those kinds of outside factors that really feed into you. And people say that that's what makes them feel confident, getting those little validating boosts. On the other hand, there is the internal confidence or the internal validation that some women say makes them feel confident, e.g., knowing that they have done something for a very long time, their track record, knowing that they have built up skills and strategies and have like a background, like a really solid base foundation of knowledge to pull from. That's their internal validation, their internal confidence. And no matter where I am, I do get a mix of both. And I feel like it depends on the age bracket. I feel like it depends a bit on the job, like the industry, what industry they're in. But I do have to say that I found that more American women validated themselves or said that that's where their confidence came from than the amount of women that I speak to in Australia. Now, that could come down to a lot of different societal factors, including, the sheer size and volume of people in America. It could come down to the fact that maybe their co-workers aren't that supportive and aren't that vocal about wins. And so maybe they don't get that outside validation. So they have to go within themselves to get that. Otherwise you'd be struggling. And so I don't know where that actually comes from, but it's interesting when I just brought that question up, a lot of their initial responses were my track record and my skills and knowledge, and I know what I'm doing. And I think that it's really healthy to actually have a balance of internal and external validation, because if you don't get that external validation, you don't know if what you're doing is actually working. You could think you're the best and you could be like, I know what I'm doing and I'm the best, but everyone else around you could be like, oh my God, she's actually not doing her job. So you need that external validation as well. And I am a sucker for wearing a good outfit to make myself feel confident and boost my confidence, but that's not what I rely on. And so I found that balance really, really interesting. And I've got to actually say, while I was in America, the first time that I did my street interviews, I was so nervous. I've been doing street interviews or vox pops or chatting to people on the street for literally 10 years. Literally 10 years I've been doing it. And if you don't know what that really looks like, I posted a behind the scenes the other day of doing vox pops when I was working as a journalist. And so you literally see all of the rejection that I go through. It's my kind of rejection therapy. And so you get to see the behind the scenes of how it actually goes down. But I've been doing this for a very long time, yet I was so nervous because I was not sure how the women were going to respond. If my Australian accent was going to carry any weight, any interest, I wasn't sure. I'd seen so many videos online of influencers in America being like, my biggest fear going out is seeing street influencers asking, what makes you feel confident? And I was like, oh my God, that's going to be me. And so I was very nervous about what the reaction was going to be. But I was pleasantly surprised. I feel like the hit rate was probably the same. different in different cities, but the answer to the what makes you feel confident in yourself did vary a little bit. Of course, I wasn't there for a super long time, and so this one is just one that I sort of picked up through conversations and I'm taking people's word for it. But the work-life balance in America still feels very off. In Europe, there are rules around bosses contacting employees outside of hours. Here in Australia, it is legislated that you can work from home. There is such a big push for wellness and for the outside of life time and having a life outside of work. Whereas in America, it was still very, very, very much a hustle culture. I spoke to so many people who literally told me about the fact that they slept under their desk, or the fact that they got half a day off on Sunday and that's it. Or just like, actually the thing that really got me was the fact that they get 2 weeks of leave per year. That's it. In Australia, is it like 4 weeks? I'm strange in the media because we have to work public holidays. We don't get them off. We normally get like a few extra days as annual leave to make up for it. So we get like 5-6 weeks as annual leave. But I think normally it's 4. And so the fact that they only get 2, what are you going to do with 2 weeks off? That doesn't even, that's just my wind down period from having worked 50 other weeks of the year. That to me was crazy. The work-life balance to me was crazy. But again, that may have been just the cities, the areas, the people that I were talking to, because I know that, in some of the maybe more chill towns where it's not as corporate, then maybe you're more chill. But I don't know, I still feel like there's such a big hustle culture over there. People had a full-time job and a side hustle. People had a full-time job and they worked Uber. People had 3-4 things on the go. And that may be because of the instability of the jobs market and other outside factors, but and so maybe it's not a choice that they can't financially have more time off. But here I really do appreciate in Australia the push for a better work-life balance. I have left the 2 biggest shocks until last. The first one is around communication. When I talk to women in Australia, a lot of the time in a corporate sense or in a career sense, women feel like they know their stuff, but they are just nervous to speak up. They don't know when to speak up. They're not sure what to say. They don't have confidence in themselves to actually assert their knowledge and their dominance in a conversation. That is sort of the first hurdle of building up really good communication and confidence in Australian women. When I was talking to American women, they don't have that barrier. They are not scared to open their mouth and speak. The challenge that they have is saying things that matter and that resonate, and even shrinking the amount that they say so that it resonates and hits harder. And so that's normally the second hurdle for women in Australia, whereas that's kind of the first hurdle that I heard from American women. That being said, I know that a lot of the time people aren't as introspective as they think that they are. They think that they've got the internal confidence, but then you start actually delving into their limiting beliefs and then it actually all comes out. And so maybe in Australia we're more introspective and more understanding of that, but that limits us. And maybe in America, they don't have that introspection, but it's still there, but they overcome it anyway. I'm not sure, but it was just very interesting that in Australia, we're too scared to speak up, whereas in America, they're not scared to speak up, but they want to be able to say something that resonates. And the last thing that I find the most jarring, the biggest difference, and I've spoken about this before, is networking. It really, really shocked me with how normal it is in America to network. They network on company time. They network at drinks. They network in line for a coffee. They network 24/7, no matter what their job is, no matter what ranking they are, they actively seek it, and it is pretty much ingrained into every type of interaction. Now, you could be saying to me that, ew, that means every interaction is transactional. I didn't feel like it was. I went to a couple of different networking events, and the women just really wanted to actually be friends and just meet each other and just talk about random things. Like sometimes jobs or careers or like what's your job title didn't come up for a really, really long time. Whereas in Australia, I feel like at networking events, people walk over and the literal first question is, what do you do for a living? And then once you talk about careers, which can be a 5-minute conversation, if you can stretch it that long, then they kind of twiddle their thumbs and they're like, oh, I don't know what else to talk about. Whereas in America, it didn't really come up until 15 minutes, 20 minutes in the conversation, and you're like, oh, actually, what do you do? Because like you're a really cool person, now I want to know more. In Australia, I find that it can be a little bit cringy to say that you're networking or that you're trying to expand your network. It can be only for certain types of people like entrepreneurs or people in sales who need to build their network, but sometimes that can be seen as a little bit slimy, like a little bit desperate, like a little bit. And that's why I talk about the fact that you need to network before you need anything, because that's when you're actually not going to have a transactional relationship. That's when you're actually going to build really personal, really genuine connections that are actually going to help down the track, because the transactional ones might feel good in the moment, but most of the time they don't actually really work out in the end. And so that stigma around putting yourself out there and actually trying to network in Australia stops a lot of people from networking. They're quite closed off in their little groups. They've got their group of friends, they've got their group of colleagues, they've got, their people that they talk to in their little bubble, and they don't care to sort of expand it. Whereas in America, I feel like a lot of people were really looking to expand their network, their friendship group, their career group, just expand in literally every single way. And now that could be also because I feel like in all of these I've got little caveats, but it's because I've done a lot of thinking about this. And it could be because a lot of the cities that I went to were kind of transplant cities. There are a lot of people who go there from different states in the US or from different countries. And so you need to build your community because you don't already have one from high school or from childhood or whatever. And so you do actually need to put yourself out there to make friends. But what I found really interesting was that people were mixing from all age groups, from all career stages. It was really ingrained into, I was speaking to one girl who was like, yeah, I was like networking at college, and then I found her on LinkedIn, and she was working at this place that I really wanted to get into. So I messaged her on LinkedIn, and then she helped me get a job. I don't feel like that happens here as much. It might happen a little bit more behind the scenes, but I feel like it is very much who you know. And so you do want to have those good relationships with people right from the start. So people in America have started networking from a lot younger age. But even if they are now far down their career path, they're part of communities, they're part of networking groups, they're part of societies that mean that they can still meet new people outside of their immediate bubble. That was the one that shocked me the most. And I feel like Australians going over there would actually have a really hard time being in those situations and knowing how to interact and know how to sort of navigate that, because in Australia, it's not really done. The last little thing I'll make on that is that it's also really encouraged by companies. They send their employees to different networking events after hours. They send them to conferences. They send them to different workshops where it's not just like a in-team workshop, it's like an out-of-office workshop. And so I think that is also a really big thing in America in terms of, and you can see that as networking. It's sort of like not even the traditional networking events or the type of way that you think of networking when you think of it as the word. It is more, it's just their day to day. It's so ingrained, it's so normal, it's so not cringe to put yourself out there and meet new people. Okay, so in a perfect world, how would I cherry pick each thing that I liked from the corporate lives of women in Australia and in America to make the perfect position for myself and for everyone else to live and work in? Okay, I would definitely take Australia's work-life balance. I would definitely take Americans' take on networking. I feel like the communication I want to explore more because I feel like there is maybe another layer to how Americans perceive communication that I'm not sure that it's good that they've skipped this first step. So I'm not sure yet. So that one's like a maybe. So it's one each and a on the fence. And oh my goodness, tall poppy syndrome, take from America, please. Okay, I'm so sick of it. Being back here has really brought it front of mind, and I cannot stop thinking about it and thinking about how it's really infiltrated so much of our lives, so much of our thinking, so much of our conversations, so much of how we interact with people. It has blown me away. So that is 2 to America, 1 to Australia, 1 bang in the middle. That is my gathering from the survey of a couple of hundred women that I have spoken to candidly, either on the street or at actual events or at actual clubhouses or at actual blah, blah, blahs. I've spoken to so many people. I'm saying that this is a very good survey. I'd put my name behind it, and I will be putting my name behind it. But I'd love to hear your takes. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you feel like constrained by some of these mindsets that I've been talking about? I'm not sure if you have noticed, but I have some letters here that have been written in to us specifically about these topics. Okay, so the first question: how can we challenge tall poppy syndrome in the workplace without feeling like we are too much? When it comes to feeling too much, a lot of the time you're either in the wrong situation or it is you against you. Too much is actually just a limiting belief. Okay, so we've got to think about, where is that limiting belief coming from? Is it something we've been told? Is it a wider societal issue? Is it something that we've just picked up on? Or, is it something that someone has said and now it's ingrained in your mind that you think it? And so once you work that out, it means that you're going to be able to push yourself beyond that limiting belief or outside of your comfort zone or outside of that situation that is repressing you to make you feel like you're too much. And so to really break it down, I want you to clock when you are thinking I'm too much or I'm doing too much or this is cringe or what are people thinking. I want you to clock when you are thinking those things and ask yourself why. Is there an actual reason, or is that just a limiting belief that you have started to believe because you've replayed it in your mind so many times that it has now become a truth even though there's no truth in it? If that is the case, it is now up to you. I always ask myself, what would the most confident version of Ashley do? Say, think in this situation. And then I do say think it, because that is actually how you become the most confident version of yourself. So it is going to be the same. If you think that you're being too much, why? Is it true? No, it's not. Let's do it. Let's actually do the thing, be a bit extra, be more than, because in actual real life, they are the ones that get ahead. They are the ones that are successful because they are doing that 1%. They aren't afraid of people thinking that they're too much. And if other people think that you're too much, that's on them. That's not on you. So you have to realize that you're thinking it and rip those chains off and go forth, because it only exists in your mind. And if other people think that you're cringe and if other people think that you're too much, that's their own prerogative. We don't have to subscribe. If confidence looks different across countries, what does it actually look like to be confident in your own way? Yes, for sure, there are differences across cultures in terms of what confidence looks like and how it can be portrayed. But I think that especially within Western societies, it is quite universal. So what does it actually mean to show up confidently in your own way? I think that really just comes down to authenticity and knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, what you need to work on. And to be authentic, that really comes down to your internal confidence, knowing your worth, knowing your internal dialogue, knowing how that impacts what you say, how you interact, what you're doing. Because if you've got like this huge persona, this huge outgoing personality, but you don't really believe it in yourself, that's when you're going to be coming across as like a little bit slimy, inauthentic. People are going to know, and you're probably going to be exhausted after the interaction because you're really having to work hard to put it on. And authenticity can look different for everyone because, of course, authenticity is working with the strengths that you have to play on that. But overarchingly, I'm just going to give you 3 things that I feel like all confident people have. One is the ability to ask questions and listen, and I think they're intertwined because if you can't listen and actually understand what the person's saying, you can't ask in-depth good questions. The second is being able to be okay with making mistakes and still continue on. That is one of the biggest ways that I think someone is truly confident. And the last one is knowing your body language and being able to read other people's body language as well, because this impacts so much of how people interact with you, how you are perceived in the world, how you think about yourself. And so that kind of ties into the limiting belief. I kind of snuck that in there because getting it down to 3 is really difficult. But being able to master your nonverbal communication is key to making people perceive you as confident and making yourself believe it as well. It's been really nice to be able to actually reflect on the good and the bad and the things that I like and the things that could be done better. So my question to you is, if you could pick and choose the strong traits that you have or want to build upon, what would they be? Because at the end of the day, it is up to you to make them true and to make that a reality. I'm going to leave you with that. But if you did like this episode, make sure that you like, subscribe, share, all of the good things. Otherwise, I will see you very soon.